Hello and welcome to Newsmakers on CHCH Podcast. I'm your host, Louie Butko, and today I'm pleased to be joined by former Deputy Prime Minister, the Honourable Sheila Copps. A born and raised Hamiltonian, Copps has had a front row seat to just about everything politics in Hamilton for most of her life. The daughter of former City Councillor Geraldine and former Mayor Victor Copps. Copps was first elected in 1981 as an MPP, becoming the first Liberal in 50 years to be elected to the Hamilton Centre riding. A few years later, she ran for the federal Liberals and would end up serving the people of Hamilton East for more than 2 decades, and in time served as the Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of the Environment, and was the first ever Minister of Canadian Heritage. Since leaving politics, she has stayed busy as a broadcaster and political commentator, including as a columnist for the Hill Times. And Ms. Copps, thank you for doing this. I really appreciate it. I want to jump right into it and talk about the Bell Media job cuts that were announced last week. Today is World Radio Day, and Pascal Saint-Onge, the current Minister of Heritage, said this: in the past decade, when acquisitions were allowed by these big companies, it came with a promise. Today, they backed away from that promise. They're still making billions of dollars. They're still a very profitable company, and they still have the capacity and means to hold up their end of the bargain, which is to deliver news reports. Now, that's strong words there, but if you were in the post, how would you react to these job cuts that we saw?
Well, I think the minister is reacting that way because the company basically blamed the layoffs on the minister at the same time, the very moment that it's actually issuing dividends to the shareholders and laying off 4,800 people. It's blaming the government for not paying out enough money. It got a cash payment last year of 40 or 50 million. And at the same time as it's laying these people off, it's announcing to its shareholders that it's going to increase their dividend, which is pretty outrageous, I think. And then they turned around and blamed it all on the government for not giving them enough money quick enough in the new legislation that's going to start paying out for the rebroadcast of regular news on social media. It is a complex issue, but I think Bell needs to look in the mirror. When the announcement came along, you saw a whole slew of white men talking about it in the same way as they fired Lisa LaFlamme because her hair was too gray. I think they've stayed in the last century and they need to smarten up a little bit.
To that point, I mean, Bell is such a brand here in Canada. They have so many arms in different places. You know, your cell phone might be Bell, or the channel on TV you're watching might be Bell. Do you get the sense that maybe Canadians don't understand the grasp of first of all, what a huge company this is, and the decisions that they make are affecting them every day, day in and day out?
Well, part of the layoffs involved the Source because they owned a bunch of retail outlets for the Source. So for sure, they're making lots of money on the telephones. Mm-hmm. Cell tels are huge. They use this kind of as an opportunity to bash the CRTC over the head as well, because they don't want to be able to have to share their links in a decision that might be coming shortly. So obviously they see the government as the problem, but I think that maybe they're grasping their reaches too far and maybe selling off some of these smaller radio stations to regional broadcasters who have more ingenuity and can be more swift of on their feet might actually be good for them. I don't think it's very good to lay off 4,800 employees and then give your shareholders a bonus. I think that was outrageous, especially since a lot of that money came in a cash payout from the government just last year.
And not to mention the fact that that $3.99 dividend, one of the highest on the TSX anyway. So when you talk about, rich getting richer, obviously we catch that. It seems like it's the popular thing to do, to blame the government, specifically this government. We've seen Trudeau's popularity dip in the years that he's been prime minister. Yeah. We've seen, people flat out attack the prime minister. What is it about today's political times that you find it becomes easy to just shout vitriol instead of actually having an argument?
Well, I think in the case of Mr. Trudeau, he's been there for 3 elections. And if you can, even Jesus Christ wouldn't be able to walk on water after 3 elections. You build enemies, people get sick of seeing you. And on a personal basis, Mr. Trudeau is having a rough ride. That doesn't mean he can't pull it out, but he needs to be aggressive. He needs to focus particularly on what the government has done. They've done some great things, the $10 a day daycare across the country, the Dentacare program for kids and soon for seniors, the way that they've tackled reconciliation like no government before them. They've done some fabulous things, but they're not very good at talking about it. And Mr. Poilievre, the head of the Conservative Party, is very good at kind of getting the slogans that really resonate with people. And if you look, for example, at the whole question of price on pollution, well, the government put a price on pollution so people would start polluting less. It's been called the tax, the carbon tax by the Tories. They call it Axe the Tax. And nobody even knows that 80% of Canadians will get more money back in their pockets because of this price on pollution, not a tax. It's a price on pollution, so people will pollute less. And we need that in the world of global warming.
You mentioned it seems like the current federal government has a communication problem. If you were advising them how, we don't think there's going to be an election this year, but there could be. The NDP could back out of their pact with the Liberals. What would your advice be to the current Prime Minister and the people around him to get up those popularity numbers?
I think he needs to start attacking more. I think he likes to tell his story and not bother with attacking the opposition. But I think Mr. Poilievre's been given a free ride. And I think for that, Mr. Trudeau and his whole team, I've been particularly impressed with Karina Gould in the Hamilton hood, because as House Leader, I think she's really been driving home the message that this is an opposition party that's talking loud, but with very few new ideas. And I think we need to do that on all fronts, and in particular, the Prime Minister. I also think the Prime Minister needs to move out of the way and let his ministers do their work.
Well, I mean, yeah, I think that it seems like that's the way to go. We've seen the ministers and what they've done, and we just mentioned that Pascal Saint-Onge quote there with the Bell Media. We saw the Prime Minister come out, attack Bell Media as well. Let's go back to Mr. Poilievre, because he attacked the media yesterday. He went after a Canadian press reporter, asking where she was from. This sort of bombastic style of politics, it's very reminiscent of what we saw in 2016 in the States. How concerned are you about the Americanization of politics here in Canada when you look down south and see what's happening?
Well, when you see somebody like the Premier of Alberta inviting Rand Paul and others to her province to help them understand the Canadian economy, and Mr. Poilievre says nothing. At the same time, we know that there's an awful lot of Americanization going on in the deep dive of Poilievre, because, as you know, some of his messaging has been going through sites and platforms that are basically targeted to the sort of the underbelly of the media that comes from the United States. That whole trucking thing, he loved it, of course, but what it was just almost an importation from the United States of tactics by people that don't believe in government. Their message was they were going to take over the government, and somehow Pierre Poilievre thought that was just absolutely wonderful. Nice believer in democracy.
Does that scare you? I mean, you served 20 years in Ottawa. You obviously know the area. Are you worried of a Poilievre government?
Of course I'm worried. He's already said that he doesn't believe in the daycare, so that would go. He certainly voted against the dental, so that would go. I haven't seen him speak out much on reconciliation, but if you look at those as sort of the three of the main pillars of the Trudeau government, Mr. Poilievre has also said that he will get rid of the CBC completely. And I think that if you look at his view of broadcasters, he hates them all. So I wouldn't expect that he'd be helping too much for Bell Media either, or any of the other players out there that are expecting to get some support from the legislation on social media payments.
How do you see the next 6 months playing out with your expertise? We've seen, Poilievre be more vocal. We've seen Trudeau fight back. Reading the tea leaves, how do you feel like the next few months are going to play out in Canadian politics?
I think it's going to be a roller coaster. The Liberals have probably gotten about as low as they can, and that roller coaster is going to start climbing back up again. But I expect that it's going to be very ugly, and probably the way that in the olden days, I used to have fights with John Crosbie, but we were friends on the sidelines. I don't think that's the case anymore in the current Parliament. I don't think there are too many friends on opposite sides of the House.
How do we get back to decency in politics? Like you said, you were friends with the opposition. You had to get business done. It seems like that doesn't happen too often anymore. Is there a way back to decency in politics?
I think what's happened with the social media and with the whole gotcha politics, decency is gone forever, I'm afraid. I don't think it's going to come back. I think the public is going to review elections differently. I think the numbers you see right now could change quite drastically, because I do believe that that people are wise enough to understand that election decisions really matter for something. But as far as the day-to-day cut and thrust of Parliament, I don't see that getting any sweeter anytime soon.
I want to jump to a bit local here. Last year, you endorsed Andrea Horwath for mayor of Hamilton. She, of course, ended up winning. She's been on the job about a year now. She's been the target of attacks throughout her role here in Hamilton. What have you made of the first 14 months of Horwath's here in Hamilton, and where do you think she can improve in her role?
Well, I think she's trying effectively to try and reach across different party lines. Obviously, I'm a Liberal. She was a New Democrat. She has been reaching out to everybody. They did manage to solve the Hamilton Street Railway issue, which was pretty difficult all the way around. I think for the best news for her is just keep working hard and working together with all the members of the City Hall, and not necessarily falling into the trap of just supporting one particular political perspective. I think you need to be balanced and kind of in the middle when you're the mayor, and that's the best place to get the support of all the people.
Isn't that what makes Hamilton so unique, though? It is so unique in terms of what you did in winning that first Liberal seat in Hamilton Centre and so long. With Horwath being elected, we have Conservative MPs. This is such a unique melting pot of the rest of Canada. It feels here in our little neck of the woods in Hamilton.
Well, I think people get along because they know each other. And the biggest problem that I've seen in politics, whether it's even in the old days of separation or kind of the viciousness that comes out of Alberta, a lot of it is people who don't really know each other. And they bought into the stereotypes instead of opening their ears and listening to what people really have to offer. We're really not that different in the end, but we allow ourselves to use wedge politics to make political points.
Yeah, well put. And like I said, there's a part of me that is scared of what we see down in the States coming here. And I appreciate your insights into all of this. The Honourable Sheila Copps, thank you so much for doing this. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Louis, for having me on, and love to talk to you again.
Absolutely. Will do. Thank you. My thanks to Sheila Copps, of course, former Deputy Prime Minister, former Environment Minister, and Minister of Canadian Heritage as well, for making the time with me today. Remember, you can like and subscribe to CHCH Podcasts wherever you get your favorite podcasts, where you can find brand new episodes of this show or any of the other great shows we have for you, including a brand new episode of the Trending Now podcast, which dropped last Friday. So go check that out while you're checking this out as well. Make sure to like and subscribe to CHCH Podcasts, like I just said, or you go to chch.com/podcasts. My thanks to you for joining me, and my thanks to Mike Corson for directing today's show. From all of us here at CHCH, I'm Louie Butko, hoping you have a great day.